Welcome back to Spelling and Word Study. My name is Mrs. Rhodes, and I'm here to get you started on Unit 26, the ERI pattern. Please take a second to gather your materials. You will need your green book open to page 161. You will also need some colorful pens, markers, or crayons. Remember, whatever I mark on my board, you should be marking on your page. Please save room for a key as well. You'll notice that I've already gone ahead and used purple vertical lines to mark my syllable breaks and orange check marks to show which syllable is stressed in each word. Remember, the stressed syllable is the part of the word that we say a little bit louder and stronger. If you would like to pause the video to add your own syllable marks and stress marks, you may do that now. All right, so we have talked about derivational suffixes. We've talked about different consonant patterns like hard G and soft G. Today we're getting very specific and we're talking about this ERI chunk that appears in the middle of many words. Now, the reason I want to draw your attention to this chunk is because the ER in these words is not going to make the usual sound. And the I in these words is not going to make its usual I or I sound. So we've got some interesting stuff going on here. All of our words this week are big words that find their roots in Greek or Latin. They are really good words to know. But let's start by reading our list. Please repeat after me. Anterior, bacteria, cafeteria, clerical, criteria, deteriorate, experience, experiment, exterior, imperial, inferior, interior, material, mysterious, period, posterior, serial, severity, superior, ulterior. Now, hopefully, as we were reading the list, you noticed that the stressed syllable in each word contains ER. But like I said, that ER does not say In most of our words this week, it's going to say ear. So let's go ahead and mark that. Let's choose a color. And let's draw a box around the ER in anterior, bacteria, cafeteria. I want to skip number 4 for a second. Criteria, deteriorate, experience, experiment, exterior, imperial. By the way, are you noticing that so far all these words that have that ear chunk are preceded by a T or a P? That's interesting, right? Inferior, now we have an F. Interior, material, mysterious, lots of T's again. Period, posterior, serial, now we have an S. We're going to skip 18. Superior and ulterior. So all of these words in a green box, where's my black pen? In a green box have ER that is pronounced ear. Okay, it's got like a long E sound. And I think it's interesting that most of the time when we have that ear sound, it's preceded by a T or a P, sometimes an S, and sometimes an F. Okay, so there's something about that letter combination that lends itself to the ear sound. Now, we skipped 2 words. We skipped clerical because that ER has a slightly different sound. It's not pronounced clerical, it's clerical. Claire like hair and scare. We see that here and we see that here. Severity. So pink box also has an ER chunk, but this time it has more of an air pronunciation. Okay, so keep that in mind. And now I want to draw your attention to the I that comes after the ER chunk, because most of the time when we see the letter I, it sounds like I, or it sounds like I, and then sometimes it takes on a schwa sound. Well, let's see what's happening today. Anterior sounds like a long E. Bacteria. Cafeteria. Skip number 4 for a second. Criteria. Deteriorate. That's a lot of syllables. Experience. Experiment. Skip that one. Exterior. Imperial. Inferior. Interior. Material. Mysterious. Period. Posterior. Serial. Severity. We'll skip that one. Superior and ulterior. In all of these words that I circled in blue, we have the letter I by itself. Notice in all of these words, it's its own syllable. There's no other letters in that chunk. So we have an I like to make an uppercase here. And that I sounds like a long E, right? So that's interesting. We see that in longer words. We also see it at the end of some words like spaghetti, ziti. So that's definitely something that we've inherited from other languages. Now, I skipped a couple of these because instead of saying E, they take on more of a schwa sound, which we would expect in an unstressed syllable. Clerical, experiment, and which one? Severity. So in those 3 words, we have the letter I, but it has more of a schwa sound. That should be in parentheses. So that has a schwa sound. Okay? So far really all we've talked about is pronunciation, right? All of this marking I've been doing is hopefully helping you pronounce the words. The rest of the words shouldn't be too tricky for you because we're seeing a lot of suffixes that we've seen before, like the AL, the OUS, the ITY. That should all be review for you. But I do want to draw your attention to a new suffix. You might have noticed that several words this week end with an IOR ending. For instance, anterior. We see it with exterior, inferior, interior, posterior, superior, and ulterior. Okay, this is a suffix we haven't talked about before, but it's a good one to know. You're going to learn more about it when you get to page 164. On 164, you're going to find out that this IOR suffix comes from Latin, and it's usually used to compare things. So, let me show you what I mean. Let's start with probably two words that you're already familiar with. Exterior and interior. Exterior means on the outside. Interior means on the inside. So if you're going to do some painting, or you're going to hire someone to do some painting at your house, the first thing you have to tell them is whether you want your exterior walls painted or your interior walls. Do you want them to paint the outside of your house, the exterior, or do you want them to paint the inside of your house, the interior? Okay, so notice using words like exterior and interior are a great way to compare places, right? I'm not talking about the inside, I'm talking about the outside, or vice versa. Now, we have two other words that maybe you haven't heard of, but these words are really helpful in the scientific community, in the medical community. We see these Latin-based words a lot. Anterior, anti means front in Latin. So anterior means closer to the front. And the opposite of that is posterior, which means closer to the back. Okay, so if you are having surgery and let's say you need repair done to one of your lungs, okay, they're going to need to know if the repair needs to be done to the anterior wall of the lung, which would be the front, or the posterior wall, which would be the back. In your knees, you have ligaments, and sometimes you hear about people injuring their knee. Maybe there's a tear. This happens a lot with basketball players, and sometimes they tear their ACL. That stands for anterior cruciate ligament. That's the ligament that's in the front of the knee. But then there's also a PCL, a posterior cruciate ligament, and that's in the back of the knee. So I'm sure if you were to study anatomy, study the human body, you could find other examples where we use anterior to describe stuff that's in the front and posterior to describe stuff that's in the back. Okay, two other words that you probably know are inferior and superior. If something is inferior, it's not as good. Okay, so there are certain brands of paper towels I won't buy because they are inferior to the other brands. They don't absorb the water, or they rip too easily. They're too flimsy. They are inferior. They're not as good. There are certain brands I like that are superior. They're better than others. Okay, so we can talk about a superior product. We can also talk about people. Sometimes people act like they're superior. They think they're so much better than you, and that's super annoying, right? So again, two words that end with IOR that are used for comparing. Inferior means not as good. Superior means better. One more word on our list that contains that IOR suffix is ulterior. Ulterior means hidden or secret, okay? If somebody has an ulterior motive, let's say someone has always been really mean to you at school, but now all of a sudden she's being really nice. Well, does she have an ulterior motive? Is there a secret reason that she's being so nice? Maybe she found out you're having a pool party and she wants to be invited, right? She's not going to tell you that. She's not going to say, okay, I'm going to be nice to you now, so you invite me to your party. Her motive will be ulterior. It's hidden. It's not as visible as some other things. Okay, so That's the first thing I want to talk about with you. Now I just want to go through the rest of our words and quickly talk about their meanings. Because like I said, we've got lots of really good vocabulary. So let's start with bacteria. Bacteria is a noun. They're actually tiny living organisms. Now, I don't want to gross you out, but you have bacteria all over your body. You have bacteria in your gut. That's what helps you digest food. When you get sick, maybe you get strep throat, maybe you get an ear infection, it's often because there is some sort of bacteria that is making you sick. These tiny little microscopic living organisms. I think you know what a cafeteria is. We can also call it a lunchroom. Maybe you eat at one of those at school. Clerical is a describing word. Okay, there's that AL. You already know that words that end with AL are usually adjectives. So if you get hired for the summer to do some clerical work at your mom's office, maybe you'll do some typing, maybe you'll do some filing, maybe you'll answer the phone. Those are all clerical tasks. So clerical just means having to do with office work or of office work. Okay, criteria. That's a noun. That comes from Greek. Criteria is a list of, it's almost think of like a checklist. The list of qualifications you need. So for instance, if you want to be the president of the United States, you have to follow some basic criteria. You have to be at least 35 years old. You have to be an American citizen. You have to have been born in this country. Those are the basic criteria. Okay? If you want to vote in this country, you have to be at least 18. You have to provide proof of address. You have to register, right? Those are the criteria, the steps that you have to follow. To deteriorate, that's a verb, right? You've noticed before most words that end with ate are verbs. So to deteriorate is to get worse. Okay, if a person's really sick and they're in the hospital, we hope that their condition will improve, but sometimes it deteriorates. Sometimes they just get sicker and sicker. Experience, I think you know, that can be used as a noun or a verb. You can have a good experience. You can have a bad experience. You can experience wonderful things. You can experience terrible things. Experiment, that's a noun. That can also be used as a verb, though. You can do a science experiment at school, but you can also experiment with different things. Years ago, my son did an experiment with different liquids. He tried to see what would happen if he poured syrup and vegetable oil and water on top of each other. So he was experimenting with lots of different liquids. We talked about exterior. Imperial, that's another adjective. Again, we have that AL ending. Anything imperial has to do with emperors or empires. So I'm going to say of empires or emperors or empresses as well. So just like we use the word royal to describe anything having to do with kings and queens, we can use the word imperial to describe anything that has to do with empires. We talked about this and this. Material, I think you know what that is. Material is just stuff. Could be like a piece of material, like fabric, or it could just be any kind of material. You know, if you want to write a good story, you're going to have to start with some good material, some good ideas. Mysterious. O-U-S, right? We usually see that at the end of an adjective. So if something's mysterious, there's a mystery about it. Period. That's a noun. Okay, we usually think about a period as like the dot that you put at the end of your sentence. It can also be used to describe a period of time, right? So I lived in Boston for a short period, a short amount of time. Talked about this. Serial, again, A-L, tells us that it's probably going to be an adjective. Serial means of a series, right? Sometimes on the news you hear about like a serial killer. That's someone who has killed a bunch of people in a series. But we also use it to describe like TV shows, you know, instead of having a storyline that just takes place in one movie or one episode, it lasts over many episodes. So it has like a serial plot to it. Severity, I-T-Y, we usually see at the end of a noun, right? If we want to know the severity of something, we want to know how severe is it, right? I heard that somebody got into a car crash, but I want to know the severity of it. Is he hurt? Is his car totaled? What happened? How severe is it? We talked about superior and we talked about ulterior, so we are good to go. Lots of great vocab this week. Good luck, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.